All right, good morning, good afternoon. Here's some review for your quiz. Okay, so if you wanted to pause each of these and then work through them and then see the solutions, that's fine. Just ask whoever your sub is to go through these. If you're working on these on your own at home, then I would just pause the video and pick up after you've tried the questions. So these first couple here, we're just going to be solving with our square root property. All right, so these first couple we're going to be solving just using square root properties. And we could get imaginary numbers, we could get regular numbers. We'll see when we get them in the end. So for A, I need to move the 20 over. And then I would have that. And then I need to divide the 5. And we get y squared equals negative 20 over 5 is a negative 4. And then we just undo the exponent by square rooting both sides. Remember, we have to put a plus or minus on the right-hand side to get our final answer. So we'll have y equals plus or minus, and then that needs to come in front as an I because we're working with a negative radical. And then you could have done the two steps at once here because the square root of 4 is a 2. So we get y equals plus or minus 2i. That's the answer for A. For B, same concept. Move the 50. We got 2x squared equals negative 50. Divide the 2. X squared equals negative 25. Square root both sides. And we get x equals plus or minus 5i. So simple square root property. We get complex numbers on both of those. Sometimes we'll get regular numbers, but in this case we didn't. Okay? So this next couple questions here. So here and here, we're going to solve by factoring. So for these, I'm going to solve by factoring, and then I'm going to complete the square on them to remind you how to do that. And we can also do the quadratic formula for these. So I'll kind of do it a little bit of each way just to remind you how everything works. So with these two, remember, you always want to kind of start with factoring first, if that's an option. So for these ones here, we want to try factoring first because that's usually faster. Okay, so for A, I want to take out a 3y because I should see that both of those are sharing a 3y. And then after I take that out, I write what's left in parentheses behind it. So remember here, when we take that 3y out, we're left with a 1 because it wouldn't just go away. And then from there, we have to set each piece equal to 0 to get our two solutions. So we have 3y equals 0 and 3y plus 1 equals 0. Okay? Go ahead and solve those. For the first one, we get a y equals 0. And then this one's a little more complicated. We've got to move the 1 over. And then we'd have 3y equals negative 1. Divide the 3. And then we're left with y equals negative 1/3. So those are your two solutions to solving this quadratic. Okay? B is a little bit different because we can't just take something out and be done. This is the one where you have to remember two numbers that multiply to this number and they'll add to that number. So two numbers that multiply to 15 and add to 2 would be a 3 and a 5, and we have to put them in our parentheses correctly. So x's go in the front. That's how we get the x squared. And then we'll put the 3 here and the 5 here. So that would get us a 15. We want a negative 15, though, so we know one of these will be negative. If we add a 3 and a 5, we want this to be the negative because negative 5 plus 3 would be the negative 2 we're looking for. Okay? And again, since we're solving, we have to set both of these equal to 0. Okay? And then we'll get our two answers from there. So x equals negative 3 for this one. X equals 5 for that one. Okay? So that's factoring and solving. And I'll show you one of these with factoring, and then I will do the other one with quadratic formula and completing the square. Okay? So we're going to try to factor this one here. We'll see if it factors. So you have a 5x squared in the front and a 24 in the back. So you have to kind of list your factors, possibilities that you could list for the numbers that would go in the front of the parentheses and then the numbers that go in the back of the parentheses. So in the front, you only got one option, 5 and 1, so 5x and x. In the back, we have a lot more options. So we have a 6 and a 4, an 8 and a 3, a 12 and a 2, a 24 and a 1. You got 4 different options that you could try for the back numbers here. Okay? Generally, you want to try to start with the average, like the smaller ones, so either the 8 and 3 or the 6 and 4. And I would say we want to try the 6 and 4. Okay? So let's put 6 here and 4 here, and then check if that is correct. So this is the smile method, remember, so we're going to check to see if that's correct. So when I multiply the 2 outside, I get a 30x, and then I multiply the 2 inside, I get a 4x. So can you use 4x and 30x to get the 34? Well, yeah, if I just add those two together. So these need to be positives. So after we check that, we also double check the last 2 numbers, so the 6 and the 4, because we want to make sure that we got the right sign on those, which is a positive 24, which is right. Okay? And then to finish this out, we just got to set both of these equal to 0, because we're working with an equation here. So 5x plus 4 equals 0, x plus 6 equals 0. Solve the 2, we get a negative 4/5 for the one on the left. And then the one on the right, we get x equals negative 6. And I should have written x equals, but it's implied. Okay? So last one here, we're going to do it once with the quadratic formula and once with the completing the square. They should work out to be the same thing. So we'll start with completing the square first. So we need to move this over and then divide everything by 8. So this is going to have some ugly fractions here. So move the 3. And we get this. Divide everything by 8. And then we're to this point. Okay? So remember, from here, we have to take half of this number, square it, and add it to both sides. So half of a 4th is an 1/8. So I need to square 1/8 and add it to both sides. So that's going to be 1/64. So I add 1/64 to both sides, and I'm going to have to add this stuff together. Okay, so we got to get common denominator. So I got to take this one times an 8 on the bottom, so that would make it a 64. Take this one times the 8, we get a 24. So then on the right here, we're going to have 25 over 64. And then on the left, remember the little trick where when we take half of this number, that's always going to go in the parentheses down here when I factor that out. So I'll have x plus 1/8 squared. And then we can just finish it out. Square root property. We get x plus 1/8 on the left equals plus or minus 5/8 on the right. Move the 1/8 over, and then just do it where we get our 2 answers. So negative 1/8 plus or minus 5/8. So I'm going to list the answers off to the side, and then we're going to do the quadratic formula, and we should get the same thing. So when I add the 5, I'll get 4/8, which is 1/2. That's one of the answers. And then when I subtract the 5, so negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6 over 8, which is 3/4. So negative 3/4. So those are our 2 answers. We have a 1/2 and a negative 3/4. All right, backing up to the beginning here, we're going to do the quadratic formula. So quadratic formula, you will have it on your quiz. That's your quadratic formula, and we just plug stuff in. So that's my A, that's my B, that's my C. Whatever the signs are, they go with it. So negative B plus or minus square root of B squared, so that's a 4, minus 4AC over 2a. So that's 2 times 8, which is 16. So remember, I recommended that you write that out like that so you can see if your sign is going to be negative or positive. So negative 2 plus or minus the square root of, that will be a 4 times 3 is 12 times 8 is a 96. So that's going to be plus a positive 96 underneath there. So under here we'll have 100 over 16. Okay, square root of 100, hopefully you know that's 10. So we'll have negative 2 plus or minus 10 over 16. And now I just do like I did before, where I get my two answers, once with a plus, once with a minus. So if I do my positive, negative 2 plus 10 is an 8 over 16, which is a half. I do my negative. So negative 2 minus 10 is a negative 12 over 16, which reduces to negative 3/4, which shows us that we got exactly the same answer. So we can use quadratic formula or factoring, or depending on what the instructions tell us, we have to follow those. So these were your examples of factoring, quadratic formula, and finding zeros. Okay? Remember, if I'm looking for the type and number of zeros, so like for B here, I got two real answers. I got the 1/2 and I got the negative 3/4. If I back up a couple of slides here, I got two complex answers for those, okay? So that's what you're just going to have to write if it to ask or how many and what type. This would be two complex. The other one would be two real. If you get one answer, then you'll just have one real answer. So if you need to replay a couple of these before you get started, please ask. But that is your review for the quiz. So good luck, and thanks for watching.